So here we go. Let's say now we are, you guys don't need to, what am I doing? Let's just delete those. Okay. So now we're going to add our second page. So now we're just going to create a box, Command D to bring her in there. So now we've got our home. So there's our big giant website. So now we can kind of decide first and foremost, perhaps maybe the width of that. So I think that's probably a pretty good width to show your client. So I'm just going to center that on my page. So now what we can do is we can zoom out. So this first page is still 8.5 by 11. I still want this document to be 8.5 by 11, but we need this sucker to be longer. So if we go over to here, this is the page tool. If we use this, I'm going to click this page. I can now make this, let's test maybe 20. So now if that's maybe a bit big. For some reason, I'm not sure if I'm maybe doing something wrong, but I can't seem to use the actual arrows. I don't know if there's like some sort of setting, but it always seems to just snap right back. So you just kind of have to guess your page size here. I wonder if this is... Anyways, I'll play with that later. So now, again, in this instance, because we set this gray on our master page, but we do, now it's locked. So we want it to extend down. If we press Command Shift and click that item, it unlocks it. So now it's not part of the master page, it's now a new object. So now I'm going to go ahead and drag this all the way down. And since it's such, oh, that's another good thing to know. When I did that, remember how we had this little title up here? When you unlock the page, it now brings this, makes this an object. So now it brings it to front. So I'm going to Command Shift. I'm just going to drag over here because I do want to grab that title page or that little title text box and bring that to front. Bring to front, Command Shift, square bracket, bring to front, bring to back, Command Shift, Command Shift, close square bracket is bringing it to front. Command Shift, open square bracket brings it to back. Or you can use your menus as well. I'm very much about the hotkeys. So I'm going to, as we did on the other one, I'm going to grab this. So my margins, everything still translates over here. So I'm going to bring this down, but now I'm going to call this, what did we call this before? Desktop. Just call this desktop actually, because that's about all it is. Okay. Now we can decide if we want a little bit of more breathing room below that. We can now go back to this page scaling and say we're going to add a little bit more there. Make it a nice even Steven number. Okay, so now we've got that, but now we want to go and circle back and we want to highlight those sections like we were chatting about, Abby. So let's go ahead and add a new page. I'm just going to grab this. I'm going to press Command C. Oops. Oh, I duplicated my master page accidentally. And then I'm going to Command Option Shift. That's going to paste it in place. So now I'm just going to adjust my window size. So now I can, using my A arrow, so that white arrow, I'm going to slide this around. So now we can go and actually highlight those areas. Whoopsies, I moved that. Okay, so say this is basically my home page. So now I'm going to move this so it'll snap to where you know, just so the client can see where that home page would pretty much land. And so now this is our home, and then we can start to kind of relabel things. Home, putting that. Again, using our alignment, align to page, we'll center that up. And now we can continue to move that artwork in our frame to highlight our different sections. So say for instance, you know, this is maybe just a quote I wanted in there, so I'm not going to bother highlighting that. They can see it from the full page, but this is the section I do want them to see. So we can just move that around or move that up using our arrows. And then I'm just going to snap that in there. And then we'll just call this portfolio. And again, we can now center that in, and you can decide if you want, you know, you can scale this up. But again, it's always nice to be consistent. So if I want this to be a little bit larger, maybe I want this a bit bigger, making sure that's the same width. So this way, when your client's clicking through, if you double click on your pages, so now you can see what your client will see when they're skipping through. Okay. And then you can continue to add those sections. So maybe there's another one here. I don't need that quote. Say maybe this is a about section. Again, just moving our frame. So you just take in. Okay. And then you'd also have, this might be a good spot to put what you'd want your pop-up to look like. So we can now just say, just going to create another box and let's add our pop-up in there. So a good thing here, if you want to keep things within scale, if you grab your white direct select tool, and I'm going to click on here, I just want to see how much I've scaled that down, if that makes sense. So at 100%, this is quite large. When I've brought into InDesign, it's actually sitting at 25.800, a weird big old number. So that's how much I've scaled it down to fit into this page. So if I want to make sure that everything is proportioned, this is now my pop-up. I want to make sure that my pop-up is the same size as I've intended it to be from my XD file. I would just take this. So this is my percentage. I'm just going to copy this percentage. And then from my pop-up, I'm going to click this, and I'm actually just going to paste that percentage in there. And now it's completely scaled. This is scaled down the exact same amount as this has been scaled down. So now I know that those are going to visually be shown in proportion. Because if we pop this in here like this, because we can't quite figure it out, your client might look and say, like, that's a really giant pop-up screen. But now with this, it is actually what it was intended to be from when you created in XD. Home, and then, okay. And these are things that you can now, like, so say here as well, just kind of on the fly showing you guys some things. It's always kind of nice to have like a little bit of a drop shadow on those pop-ups just to like visually show. You can add things here through the drop. You can either quickly add a drop shadow here, or in effects, you can go drop shadow as well. And keeping your preview on is always helpful. You can bring that down, bring the distance in a little bit, bring the size down a little bit, or sorry, the fade in a little bit, exactly how you guys are used to working drop shadows in every other program is exactly how you would do so here. I personally like a really small drop shadow. Okay. And that's also in here, if there's other elements you guys want to add that would be helpful for me or your client, you can say, whoopsies, you can add some more annotations in here. You know, navigation. changes color on hover if you want. So you could put that stuff in here now, just so we can see what's happening. Again, you're not changing the color, you're not specifying the color, but it's in there as a note, so your client, so your client can see. That's also something you could add when you are creating your files in XD. You can say duplicate another home page and say, I would like to, maybe it's not the color. I actually just want to have a small fine line that goes underneath. So I'm going to pull in this. Woo! My mouse is being very funny today. And then maybe I want to make this bold. Okay, so those are things you can add in there, and then you can also note them when you're creating your sites or when you're creating your presentation. That's a bit of a mouthful and a bit of might be overwhelming. It's really getting used to that program. It's like I said, it's so nerdy to me because I adore InDesign. I love getting so specific with placement of things, exactly where things go, getting down to like that fine number, making sure things are consistent with master pages. I love working with that grid. It really just takes your work from here to a different level when you are really working on defined grid, when you give everything some breathing space, and that all comes in time. You know, when I looked at my stuff from first year in comparison to third year, there's light years difference. You know, suddenly I now start to see like, oh, right, there's that bit of breathing room. And I also think when we're busy, or maybe when this is something new, we're getting it done, so we're throwing it in there. But we're training ourselves now to take that next step. Let's take that next step into how can I refine this? How can I make this look like a designer has touched it? Because we are designers, so everything should look real damn good. I just realized I'm still recording.